When I was a kid, my mom would tell me that people are either a glass half full or a glass half empty, presenting me with that common example of optimism versus pessimism. I would always ask her, "Mom, am I a glass half full or am I a glass half empty?" Now, because I was a standout in the field of negativity as a child, her answer was always catered to me. She would say, "Abel, you are a glass half shattered." Optimism is the expectation that outcomes will be positive, while pessimism is the expectation that they will be negative. Our society teaches us from a young age that optimism is a desired trait of the two, while pessimism is a negative trait. How very pessimistic of them. I can remember being told that if we're always and consistently expecting the best, we will succeed. We are conditioned to want to be starry-eyed idealists. But what if this reality of optimism and pessimism is just simply not the case? Researchers claim there's a technique, defensive pessimism, that anxious people use to manage their anxiety. Defensive pessimism is the use of natural negative thinking to achieve goals. To manage anxiety levels, natural pessimists will set expectations low. For example, I will definitely not get what I was auditioning for. Scientists even found that pessimists worked better with a negative mindset than a positive one. I have definitely been an anxious kid my whole life. I can remember being 3 hours early to an audition and watching all the judges arrive and set up everything from my car. I once sat outside Jiffy Lube for an hour, thinking about what I would do if they told me my air filters needed to be replaced. Researchers agree that most forms of pessimism are a result of high anxiety levels. Julie Norham, a researcher at psychology at the Wellesley College in Massachusetts, claims that a huge benefit to pessimism is imagining possible negative outcomes to develop strategies for action should they be needed, showing that even if the worst happens, pessimists are often prepared. Those who think optimism is the only viable trait are likely to claim that pessimism leads to increased complaining, that expecting the worst leads to increased vocalization of negativity. Let me be very clear here. When I'm talking about pessimists, I'm not talking about the people who will not stop complaining, the Debbie Downers of the world, if you will. I'm not talking about my man Eeyore. I'm not talking about sadness from the hit 2015 Disney movie, Inside Out. I'm not talking about, although he is very relatable, Oscar the Grouch. And I most certainly am not talking about the Grinch. I'm talking about the people who control their pessimism and use it to their advantage, rather than letting their pessimism control them. Since it is clear that there's both optimists and pessimists can be vocal complainers, I think it's important to avoid putting the weight of complaining on pessimism. I know as a child I felt like if I had a negative expectation, I was just being a complainer, when in reality I was just rationalizing my own anxious thoughts. In the words of Rudy Francisco, the famous poet, "It doesn't matter if the glass is half full or half empty. There's water in the cup. Drink it and stop complaining." There are upsides and downsides to both ends of the spectrum, but society only preaches one as acceptable. Some people's best traits come from pessimism, such as being very precautious and prepared. I think it's a common mistake to label pessimists as negative people, when a more appropriate definition would be cautious thinkers. The audition I mentioned earlier, for which I showed up 3 hours early, is my case in point. I was auditioning against hundreds of other students to fill 20 spots in a 2-week arts conference with some of the most renowned artists in the world. I had to be interviewed by a panel of judges and explain the technical and theoretical aspects of my own work. You could imagine how nervous I was. I mean, I'm just an anxious kid from rural Oklahoma. What business did I have with all these artists? I spent weeks preparing for any question they might ask me, including how I would stand and how I would introduce myself. The day finally came, and after that brief 3-hour stint in my car, I was able to perform to the best of my abilities. After all that preparing for the worst, the best happened. I was accepted into the prestigious program. It's important to utilize the way your brain thinks, whether that is optimism or pessimism. Because the only way to truly succeed is to lean into your intuition. If your natural inclination is to see the world in a positive light, that is fantastic. However, that should never be used to impede upon the pessimistic thinking that motivates many people. So whether you are a glass half full, a glass half empty, or even a glass half shattered, just be sure to fill the rest with a glass half you. You get this.